Be sure to subscribe and click on the bell for notifications on future uploads. Hello everyone, Simon Bart here, or you can call me Silly. Well, let's continue looking into more of the movies of Blue Sky Studios, and this time it will be of their first feature-length movie. And in most respects, it's still enjoyable as when I first saw it. Released in March 2002 and being the studio's biggest franchise, including 4 sequels, 2 holiday specials, and a small amount of short films, the movie is simply known as Ice Age. During the prehistoric time known as the Ice Age, all the mammals of the era are heading south for migration, as snow slowly covers the land. But a mammoth named Manfred isn't going south, and avoids being social with other animals, and a giant sloth named Sid is left alone as his family migrated without him. Yet Sid accidentally ruins a salad for 2 rhinos by stepping in it, and Sid runs away as the rhinos chase him. He then comes across Manfred, who saves Sid, and Sid decides to befriend Manfred by mainly calling him Manny, though Manfred would rather be alone despite Sid wanting to tag along. Meanwhile, a pack of saber-toothed tigers, led by Soto, arranges an attack on the humans for ridding their kind and using their fur for warmth. So he sends his right-hand companion, Diego, to bring the human baby to the pack alive. And as the men fight off the tigers, who keep them distracted, Diego chases down the mother of the baby, who runs off with her child and jumps over a waterfall. Soto then gives Diego a second chance to get the baby on his own, as Soto and the pack head to Half Peak and wait for him. Soon Manfred and Sid find the mother with her baby by a river, where Manny saves the infant and the mother is taken away by the river. And since the baby is rescued, Sid suggests to return it to the humans, yet Diego meets up with the 2 mammals to say that the humans left their camp. Manfred knows they're headed to Glacier Pass, as they have a settlement past the mountains. Diego then suggests to take the baby to the humans himself, yet Manfred decides to do the same, but go as a team. So the 3 mammals go together with Diego leading the way, and Sid carrying the baby, as they head to Glacier Pass to bring the infant to the humans before they're missed, when Diego is really bringing them to Half Peak for the tiger pack, and take the infant. Along the way, they encounter various places and troubles, such as taking care of the baby and keeping warm from the oncoming snow. All the while, the humans are out in search for the baby, thinking the tigers have taken him. I remember the first time when I saw this movie, and I was probably on vacation with my younger brother and mom, and we watched it in like a hotel or a motel via pay-per-view. And we did have a fun time watching it and laughing at it. And looking back at it, it's still enjoyable. Yeah, I like it more for different reasons than just what's being featured. Sure, I did watch it a few times once I owned it on DVD and had the same reactions to it every time, but nowadays I notice the little details in it that I didn't think of before, with an occasional few that don't work or rather feel off. And what I mean by that is how the film looks. Don't get me wrong, a lot of what's being shown still works, such as the backgrounds and the designs of these animals. But only 2 things tend to bother me. One is the fur texture. It kind of looks mucky and wet and not soft and fluffy, which I will give it the benefit of the doubt for it being 2002 and as the studio's first movie, but it did feel a bit distracting. The same can be said for the humans, that is, their facial design, which almost look bulky and not smooth and streamlined. Yet to me, they do look like illustrations of a children's book that have similar facial structures, which isn't too bad. Plus, they never talk and only emit some grunting, shouting, and yelling. Outside of those issues and a couple of continuity errors, everything else seems to work pretty fine. The characters, for what they are, mainly seem to be likable, though it didn't hit me until now that both Manny and Sid are a take on Shrek and Donkey, if you can believe it. And it may feel odd with how similar they are, but they do have their differences, aside from being a more lighter take on Shrek and Donkey's antics, with Manny being more sarcastic and a little intimidating when angry, yet occasionally helpful, and Sid being a bit politeful and optimistic, without going overboard or annoying per se. While Diego, despite being part of his pack and working for them, is kind of his own thing, and in some ways is more sensible, even if he schemes to get what he needs. Yet all three work off well each other, and that includes its actors, and I don't hate any of them or find one annoying. And yes, while these animals are based on prehistoric mammals with only a slight change to make each one stand out, Sid and the two female sloths are the only characters to stray from what the giant sloth looks like, most especially with the head and face. Sure, it isn't accurate and could be done like how a giant sloth would look like, but Sid isn't too ugly looking, and he's basically made to look silly for being the comic and likable relief he is. But the only character that was an original creation for the movie is Scrat, a squirrel-like creature who is trying and failing to hide or get his acorn. Yet all of the scenes involving him are both funny and a little sad, but pretty entertaining as I laughed and or giggled at the scenes he's in. He also occasionally crosses paths with the main characters, even though he's a background character. And the first 3 or 5 minutes of him ended up being used as the teaser for the film, and it became tradition to have every Ice Age sequel use this opening for their teasers. But what else is funny is about everything else. And as a kid, I laughed and giggled at almost every bit that's being thrown at, and that includes the Scrat scenes, the scene of Sid, Diego, and Manny trying to stop the baby from crying, and the 3 of them trying to get a melon from dodos who are storing food for the oncoming Ice Age. And most of them still work for me as an adult, including a few that pass over my head, like the various names and insults the characters give to one another. Like the rhinos calling Sid a weasel, Sid calling Diego Bucktooth and Tiggy Wiggy, and Manny calling Diego Uber Tracker, which nowadays seems hilarious in hindsight. The montage of the heroes traveling is another funny scene, which includes them passing Stonehenge, Old Faithful Geyser, and Sid getting hit by a giant snowball, which I like to think is the same snowball that Scrat gets rolled up in, and I don't even question how it got to Sid after Diego flicked Scrat in a different direction. And when the heroes are in the ice cave, all of the things Sid come across that are frozen are illustrations composited in the 3D world. That's pretty neat. Though how the baby knows how to do the Vulcan salute after seeing the frozen alien ship is beyond me, but it's funny either way. Plus, there's occasional bits of animation details, such as Diego's eyes glowing in the dark. And is it just me, or does the way Scrat falls here almost look stop motion? But one moment of the movie that seems underrated is the musical score by David Newman, and it is quite interesting to listen to. Whereas the main theme, the wind instruments used for the humans, the themes for silly moments or action moments, or the choir used for Manny's flashbacks, there's always something to the music that's charming or engaging. And yes, this movie introduced me to the song Send Me On My Way by Rusted Root. Though one moment in the movie that got me teary-eyed as a kid is Manny's backstory, shown as moving cave paintings within a 3D background. And it wasn't with just how it's shown that got me, but also Newman's music and use of choir, almost sounding James Horner-esque, like For the Land Before Time, or An American Tail. And though I did feel sad as a kid over this scene, I've gotten over it as I grew up, similar to how Bunny was depressing for me as a kid. And the actors who voice their characters are pretty good. Ray Romano voices Manfred, or Manny, John Leguizamo voices Sid, Dennis Leary voices Diego, Gordon Visnick voices Soto, Jack Black voices Zeke, Cedric the Entertainer voices Carl, Stephen Root voices Frank, Diedrich Bader voices Oscar, Alan Tite voices Lenny, Tara Strong voices Baby Merithium, Jane Krakowski and Lori Bagley voices Rachel and Jennifer, respectively, and Chris Wedge voices Scrat. As a whole, this movie is pretty much alright. The characters are enjoyable, the story is nice, and the animation, for 2002, is lovely. Director Chris Wedge and co-director Carlos Saldana have made a very decent film for being their first feature-length movie from Blue Sky Studios. Although I did enjoy it as a kid, or rather a preteen, when first seeing it and watching it more times when owning it, it nowadays still works, yet for different ways, and some problems I have of it are mainly how the fur looks and how the humans are designed. Other than those, it's still a good enough start for Blue Sky Studios, and works well enough as a standalone film, until the sequels, which we'll get into another time. So today, this movie we're going to rate of 3 stars. So thank you for joining me. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Facebook or Twitter, support me on Patreon, and until next time, for a new video.